some innovations of Busoni are so important that they apply still very much today, and they apply not just to the music of Bach, but to all music everywhere, and I highly recommend that we all think in these terms in our playing and our teaching. This is the difference between iambic and trochaic rhythm. Now, I talk about these in music of all composers. These are terms that come from poetry. An iambic rhythm is where we begin on a weak beat and go either to the strong beat or through the strong beat. A trochaic rhythm begins straight on the strong beat and ends on beat. Here's a perfectly trochaic rhythm. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty took a great fall. And then the rhythm turns iambic. And all the king's horses and all the king's men. Couldn't put Humpty together either, right? You hear the difference. Now, I think many teachers teach this concept using different terms. I heard, for example, teaching to the one, or playing to the one, phrasing to the one, which is a part of the iambic style, but only part of it, because sometimes the unit goes past the one. It really very much depends. So recognizing the difference between these two rhythms gives us a much more interesting and a much more rich performance. And the problem is that many editions confuse the student by putting slurs in ways that make everything tricky. So this is now the time, which must come in every presentation I do, where I complain about Czerny's editions of Bach. These are very much available still online and still printed by Schubert for reasons unknown to me. And they have now confused so many generations of students. Now, Czerny's editions and Czerny's contribution to the world of pianism is just immensely fascinating. Czerny claims that he wrote down the preludes and fugues exactly, note for note, the way his teacher, Ludwig van Beethoven, played them. Problem is, Beethoven played his own version, which included some interesting notes. In one famous case, an extra measure in the first, in the C major prelude from Book 1. And apparently slurs that are used either just ridiculously or anomalously in some way. So take a look at some of these examples. Do you notice that in a Czerny edition, that every single slur ends before the beginning of the next measure? So we get well, that sounds bizarre and is bizarre, and you can see that somewhere along the way I have actually, that's the next one already. So yeah, so somewhere along the way, I actually wrote in slurs because I couldn't stand it. But yes. So the things you see in blue boxes are just absolutely bizarre slurs. So we write music with beams, and these beams connect groups, rhythmic groups of notes. For our convenience of reading them. I mean, if we didn't have beams, we wouldn't know where we are in the measure. So therefore, at the time, but that's not how the music is organized at all. You can see Busoni's slurs. These are now appropriate. Right? Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And you see the same thing about Invention 13, where Czerny does something ridiculous like Busoni fixes it all very nicely. You don't need to exaggerate like I'm doing it for clarity, but suddenly then the subject makes sense. So let's take a look at what happens if we put that into an actual piece. So here is the F major invention, which we all teach and play and study. It has the most iambic possible of subjects that Rock is mentioned. Right? It doesn't get any more iambic than that. But somewhere along the way, a little bit later, new material comes in that we see with a green hat. And then there's plenty more where that came from. Again, I'm exaggerating, but you can see that these units are very archaic indeed. They begin and end within one measure, and you probably are going to phrase them kind of going towards the center. Whereas, of course, the main melody, right? That's the only way this works. And suddenly, within a piece which can so easily sound like a Hienon exercise, we have variety, we have contrast, we have expression, we have fun. And now you don't need to do huge ritardandos, and you don't need to do rubato, you don't need to do dynamic waves, because we now have expression that is organic to the piece.